I am Dr. Ramakrishna Aduri. This video we are making particularly for those candidates who are finding learning English difficult. And we know that most of the people, of course, when they're trying for admissions or when they're trying to get a job, they're finding it difficult because their communication skills in English are very weak. So we are trying to make an attempt to fill that gap, and this video aims at giving you some resources so that you can improve your English much faster and get the opportunities what you've been waiting for. And learning English is not at all difficult. It is very easy. Only thing is you need a right approach for that, a practical approach. Many people, they say that learning English is easy just because it has got only 26 letters. This is a ridiculous proposition. Though English has got only 26 letters in its alphabet, English has got more than 1 million words in it. Means more than 10 lakh words are there in English language. The Oxford 20-volume dictionary, which was published in the year 1989, has got about 1,71,000 entries. Means the number of words, 1,71,000. And besides that, there are about 47,000 words which are obsolete, which are rarely used. And therefore, it is not that 26 letters only we have and all that, but we have a lot of words in English language, and it's a dynamic language, and every year so many new entries will come up because English accepts words from other languages. And therefore, the English language, of course, I need not tell you about the richness of that, the number of words. And it is therefore imperative for you to start learning as early as possible and make sure that you are comfortable in learning the language. And see, when you are comfortable, it does mean that you can retrieve the word whatever you get when you speak and when you write. Okay, so we speak what we listen, and therefore the input source, listening, whatever we have, and you should be very, very comfortable in listening and understanding, so that you can start using the same words, same phrases, same sentences. And also you can add your experience to that and refine your language and rephrase and speak really well. And you see, what you are listening is very, very important. So if you can listen good English, probably it makes easier for you to speak good English too. And similarly, when you read so well, of course, good texts when you read, you can also write similarly, like. And therefore, my contention here is that there must be a lot of listening and there must be a lot of reading for you to write and of course to speak good English. My next point is that if you can use 400 words, you can speak English comfortably. You can manage, not that it is real comfort, but you can manage to speak reasonably good English if you know about 400 to 500 words. But remember, that is not enough. If you can understand about, if you know about, if you are familiar, probably like 2,000 to 3,000 words, if you know, and you can speak very comfortably English, and a lot of material that you read you can understand, and a lot of people when they speak you can understand, and that requires some effort. It takes some time. See, overnight you can't get. But learning to speak basic English is not at all difficult. Maybe a conservative estimate is that you can learn maybe in a week's time. Okay, it doesn't take more than that. With your 400 to 500 words, and to speak error-free English, it doesn't take more than that. But let me tell you honestly one thing. When I say that you know a word, what does it mean actually? Like, you know the spelling of the word, pronunciation of that, and meaning of that word in the particular context, and you also should be able to use it in a sentence. Then you say you know that word. Okay, and most important thing is that it's not knowing a word and leaving it. If you frequently use that word, whenever you need, you can retrieve that word. For many people, when they read, they understand, but they can't speak. Okay, when they listen somebody, they can understand that particular word, but they can't speak. The problem is you are not able to retrieve that word when it's required. So if you can get the word which is in your mind when you need it, that's a very, very important quality of like speaking English or writing English. That word you should be able to recall when it is needed, and that is a tough game for many people. So retrieval is important. See, not that you know it, but when you need that word appropriately, you should get that word and you should be able to frame a sentence using that word, and you should have sufficient fluency so that you can speak without any gaps. And therefore, if you start using English, it is perhaps the only way where you can speak reasonably good English. Practice is essential for any language for that matter, and more so for English, because we are non-native speakers. Therefore, it is essential for us to practice a lot. And we may speak very occasionally. We don't speak regularly unless you are in an English environment and all that, in a school or college where of course English is spoken. And therefore my point here is that you use English as much as possible. And there are 2 points of course one should keep in mind here. Necessity makes it your language good. Okay, the necessity. And if you are comfortable speaking your vernacular language, you never can learn. So you should be able to make it mandatory for you when you have people who can understand it. It is a sign of culture. It is a sign of eliteness. It is a sign of your, etiquette. It's everything. When you speak English proudly, of course, you get the acceptance in the people, and you are considered well-read only when you speak reasonably good English. Fine. And practice makes it better. So initially you should have a necessity to speak in English. You have got people who don't understand your mother tongue, therefore you should speak in English. And second thing is, lot of practice makes it better. So these 2 are essential for you to embark on speaking English, necessity and practice. And having said that, of course, I tell you how to start. Okay, what's the roadmap for that? What's the plan of action for that? Initially, I expect everybody to download 500 most commonly used words in English language. I repeat this one, 500 most commonly used English words in English language. So this list can be downloaded in PDF as a PDF file, and these 500 words, when you see which are most commonly used, mind you, you know most of them. Okay, maybe 300 to 400 words, you know them, maybe even more. And the remaining few, whatever you have, of course, you should start learning about them. So if once you know that these are the 500 words that I can comfortably use, I think your journey has already begun. You can start speaking. So initially what you're supposed to do is that download about 500 most commonly used English words, and go through all of them and make sure that you understand each and every one of them, and you can use them, because that's more essential. And then your journey begins, because you know 500 words, you can start your journey. Usually, you should understand something. When you speak a sentence or write a sentence, that has got 2 aspects, of course, subject and verb. Okay, these 2 are the essential components of any sentence, what you write or what you speak. So when you know that there is a subject and there is a verb, and most common error, of course, I see here is that agreement fails. And when you have a subject and the verb, there must be an agreement. So that is important actually, and therefore it is not just you frame a particular sentence, it also demands the agreement, verb agreement. So the verb must be in consonance with the subject you are talking about. Therefore subject and verb, there must be an agreement. Suppose you say he, okay, you start with the third person singular, you say he, you should say reads, and say in the present tense when you're using he reads. That's an agreement. You can't say he read. You can't say they reads, they plays and all that. No. So that is what we mean by agreement, verb agreement, and that is the most important one. Many people, they fail there because their verb is not in agreement with the subject they're talking about. So when you frame a sentence, when if you can understand that there should be an agreement between these two, and a lot of people, I advise them very strongly one thing, like suppose if you have a sentence, you can write a sentence which exactly gives opposite meaning of that one by including not or by eliminating that not. Okay, so he is a player, he is not a player. So whenever you hear a sentence, make sure that you can frame another sentence which sounds like that exactly, but it is a opposite of what was told a bit earlier. So two sentences you have already got. If one sentence you are pretty sure it is grammatically correct, the second sentence automatically follows. Then having got these two sentences, it is also right time for you to think of what question gives this answer. So you should be able to frame a question. Then the question of auxiliary verbs just pitches in. So helping verbs you call it. So you should be able to frame a question given the answer. When the answer is in the affirmative, and if you can frame a question so that you can be comfortable to speak with people, because you can ask a question and you know that what kind of answer you can expect, of course, either in the positive or in the negative. They may say yes, it's true, or they may say no, it's not. So asking a question is very, very important. So whenever you find a particular sentence, it's immediately essential for you to think mentally, of course, what question gives this answer. The question again can be asked in two different ways, of course, as a positive question and a negative question. So already you got 4 sentences. That's it. Okay. So you can start building like this, a sentence and a negative sentence. And what these two answers, framing the questions. So you are developing, of course. Okay, can you swim is the question. Is Sara your teacher? That is another question. Does Rahul play volleyball? Is another question. Do Leela and Ramya going to do they go, or something like that? So these are all the questions. When you are starting the questions, generally you can start with some helping verb. Of course, you have got your 5 wives and 1 husband, which make the questions. 5 wives are what, when, where, which, and whom, or whatever it is, like 5 W questions, and 1 H question is 1 husband is how. So you can frame questions starting with any of them, and you should be comfortable in framing the question when you are given an answer. So if you are given an answer, you start framing the question, and in case you got a question, of course, you can give the answer, relevant answer to that. This kind of exercise, of course, which can happen mentally, will take you a long way. Okay, once you have got these questions, and see, it becomes easy for you to learn English language if you can download some infographics. Okay, and they are pretty good to watch and very soothing to the eyes, and there is some amount of content there, and it's a pictorial representation. Information, and it's graphically presented, is an infographics. See, if you want to remember some tenses in grammar, or if you want to learn about the kinds of verbs and all that, if you want to learn anything related to grammar, you take one small aspect and you must be getting some infographic. If you can design your own infographic, it is always better than like downloading from the net. But however, net can give you an idea, of course, how exactly the infographic should be designed. So you download an infographic, and perhaps you can customize that, making your own infographic, so that all the grammar points, whatever you have got, can be remembered very well, because you got information which is graphically presented. Of course, it's easy to consume rather, and that makes your work much easier. So don't think that grammar is completely separate. It is a part of our learning process. So we call it the rule book. Okay, it's essential for you to think of the rule book, without which, of course, you can't go ahead. My point here is, when you want to learn the syntax of the language, that's grammar of the language, I just tell you, you learn in such a way that you are applying it, immediate application of that. Okay, and whether you are thinking of an article, or whether you're thinking of a preposition, or whether you're thinking of a noun, or whatever it is, like, you have a sentence in front of you and you are looking at the example and understanding the grammar. See, not earlier we used to start, okay, this is the definition, these are examples, this is the worksheet you have to do and all that. Now we just come out of that. We have done with that method. We are talking about straight away, you take an example and learn about that particular term in grammar. So we are moving the other way. We are starting with the example and then we say, oh, this is called an article. Fine, this is how it's used. So we are coming from the functional aspect of that, and that makes the things much easier for you. So this is how you can learn grammar and take from the usage of English and learn about the theoretical part of it. Okay, the grammatical terms, whatever you have, the definitions and all that, we don't go by that method. We take examples, usage of English, and then we say, oh, this is the grammar aspect of that in that particular sentence. Okay, so this is how we have moved into, like a different method, of course, where we start with the application and slowly we move to understanding the grammatical aspect of that one. Then I want to tell you one thing. Many of you feel that you know English, because there is nothing wrong in that. It's a matter of confidence. But however, if you can find out, of course, how many words you exactly know. And usually what happens in some of the spoken English classes I have seen, and the teachers have got, their diction is not that good, but the students are good. I mean to tell you that your teacher may be knowing only 400 words, 500 words. Probably you may be knowing more than that, but you're sitting in the class because you don't have confidence. That's the difference. With 400 words, he's just managing to speak. He's teaching English and he's doing so many things. But you are sitting like a student there and learning from him, though your vocabulary, the diction, we call it, of course, is comfortably more than that 400. And therefore, what is essential for all the speakers is self-confidence. So that comes only when you start speaking. Imagine a situation that you are compelled to speak English and there's nobody who understands your mother tongue. And therefore, under those compelling reasons, you start speaking. The necessity. Okay. And there is absolutely no one, of course, who can understand your language. At least you start speaking English language so that you can, okay, there is no problem, you can, and you make the people, of course, understand what exactly you're trying to say. So now here, a student who completes grade 10 is supposed to know about 1500 words. That's really a comfortable level of speaking English or writing English. Of course, 1500 words is a good count actually, and a graduate should know 3000 words. Okay, maybe you have studied economics, I have studied mathematics. My words may be different from your words. Of course, the specific words, of course, where we have studied that particular discipline in the university. But let me tell you honestly, you know 3000 words, I know 3000 words. And out of those 3000, 2000 words may be general words. Of course, both of us know. Okay, 1000 words are maybe specific to my subject, maybe 1000 words are specific to your subject, of course, which I may not be very familiar with your subject. So my point here is, if that is the expectation from the students and the graduates, of course, who are coming out of colleges searching for some employment, the condition is so alarming and so awful that they know only 400 words, 300 words. Many teachers I have seen, with the seasoned teachers with an experience of about 10 to 15 years, their vocabulary count, of course, is just 300, 400. They manage. The last 20 years, they speak the same sentences. Unfortunately, like, get up, have you done the homework, and have you paid the fees, and stand up, you're making noise, and keep quiet in the class, and and open your textbook on page number 23. These are same sentences, just going on, and therefore you are not trying to improve your vocabulary. What is the best method to improve your vocabulary is reading books. As simple as that. When Shashi Tharoor was asked, of course, give us one word so that we get a lot of inspiration and we want to follow it, he said just read. And that's the word given by him. read a lot of books. And when you read a lot of books other than the prescribed books, what happens is you come across so many words which are not familiar to you. So when you come across the new words, I'm not using difficult words, remember that, they're all new words. When you come across a new word, you just underline that. And if it's possible, of course, refer to the dictionary, write the meaning of that, and start using that word. It's a you feel that happiness when you come across a new word, you have understood that word, you know how to use it. This is how you have to enrich your vocabulary day in and day out. There's nothing like that. There's a time for it. This happens constantly when people are speaking. You're watching a movie and reading, listening to some podcast, whatever it is, like, in all the contexts, when we day in and day out, of course, we get opportunities of coming across very many words which are very unfamiliar to us. Therefore, adding new words to our repository is a continuous process which happens and without any break. And people who are keen to learn new words, they enrich, and when they speak, of course, people love to listen to them. When they write, people love to read their narratives. So that is important actually. Enriching our vocabulary is the most important aspect of learning any language. Enriching our vocabulary, so many words. So see, what is the advantage of that vocabulary? When you need to use a particular word, you just use the appropriate word. It just fits in the frame. You can't replace it by any other word. There is no substitute for that. The exact word you get, you can retrieve that word. You can get from your memory the exact word, because you're using it, of course, so frequently, and you can't miss that word. And when you use these appropriate words when you speak or when you write, and your language, of course, is really flowering, because you're using words which are really required there in that particular context. And therefore, for all the English language learners, this aspect, whatever we have, improving our vocabulary, is a built-in mechanism, of course, whether you are developing this vocabulary either consciously or unconsciously. It's happening continuously. This is the first part. And the second and most important one is that how do you, like when you have a specific question about a particular word and you want to learn about it, I just tell you dictionary.com will help you. Dictionary.com will give you the spelling, as I told you, of course, the pronunciation, and simultaneously you can understand the meaning of that, maybe 2-3 different meanings, and also using it in a sentence. All the features of a word can be learnt from this site, dictionary.com. Sometimes we will wonder, and what we are, like a word which we are frequently using, it may be like you may be pronouncing it wrongly, like, it can happen. But we are not aware of that. Only thing is, now and then you just have to check what you're using, whether that word is rightly pronounced by you or not, whether you are listening it in the right way or not. So, and it is essential for you, therefore, to take the help of dictionary.com. In many cases, we have got apps also which give you the meanings of the words instantly. You can get, of course, when you hear a new word, and automatically, of course, you just check that word and know the meaning and know the spelling, and use it in a sentence, and the pronunciation of that, which is even more important. Okay, if you can understand the phonetic script, and from the dictionary, if you can understand the pronunciation of that, it's quite fine. But if it's not possible, these days we've got audio files which you can play, and you can understand the pronunciation of any word you are encountering. So this is the most important one. And the next thing I want to tell you is about the structure of a sentence. Okay, so there are many ways of framing a sentence, like picking up all the words, phrases, whatever you have, clauses, and you make a sentence which is sensible and which gives complete meaning. But don't go into the complex nature of that, the intricacies of that. There is absolutely no need. Remember some 20 structures, basic structures, simple structures, and you can follow the same and write some more sentences. It's very easy. Like, if you just say, I am reading a book. Suppose you got subject and a verb and an object, or whatever it is, like, direct object or an indirect object, whatsoever it is. So write some more sentences following the same. Change the subject, change the verb, okay, change the object and write some more sentences. That makes sense. So what is happening there is you are practicing English language and writing and framing more and more sentences and all that, and you are using different words, of course, which you are familiar with, and therefore learning structures is the second most important aspect of learning English language, learning structures. But I suggest here, don't get confused that when I say structure, there's so many and how to remember all the structures and all that. That's why I said just 20 structures, not more than that. So that could put you in a very comfortable position and you can frame a sentence, and don't try to build a complex sentence, and if you fail and looking for words, it looks odd. Okay, it may get delayed when you're speaking. So therefore, my point is simple structure, break that large sentences into smaller ones and just tell what you want to. And be simple. What's wrong in that? Of course, speaking a simple language is difficult, of course. But usually some people are crazy about using high sounding words. But I tell you, like, if you use one or two words here and there, people think that, okay, you have used some words, of course, which are, you know, like, but you can't maintain the consistency. That's a problem. So therefore, there is a disturbance to the flow, because occasionally you are using very big words, you know, like words which have got so many letters in that, but unfortunately you can't maintain and sustain that flow, and therefore there is no point in that. Speak simple language and it really works. And one of the finest methods, of course, when you are talking about learning English is, you know, like telling something to the people. Okay, but how do you get the content? So then the easiest way is you read some stories. Okay, you get so many stories, and you get ebooks also. You can download them these days. It's very easy, and lot of stories you'll get. A simple text you've got. But now my point is, when you read the story, you understand. But you may not understand each and every word, because this is the most important one. You feel that, no sir, I didn't get every word of it. Not necessary. Who said that you need to? See, when you watch a movie and you understand the gist of that, you understand the summary of that, you understand synopsis, the theme and all that, if you can understand, of course, that makes sense. And there is absolutely no reason for you to know each and every word used by them. Okay, fine. Now, having read the story, okay, see, then you start narrating that. You tell in your own words. This is one of the finest exercises you can ever think of. And see, the important point, of course, I have to tell you emphatically here is that you read a story, understand it, okay, fine. Then, if it's possible for you, you can pick up the same words that you have read, or you can use your own words, and ultimately you are trying to transfer that to some other person. Of course, you are able to communicate the same story what you read, you are trying to speak out, and that's a very, very good way of learning English. And some of you may feel, sir, who is going to listen to my stories actually, like if I narrate them? Fine, I have another way of putting this across, and that is, you read some jokes. Everybody likes the humor. When you are in a party, when you are with a group of people, nobody denies if you start telling a story. Of course, they listen with a rapt attention. Of course, that captivates all the people, of course, around you, and they love to be with you because you are good at you know, telling jokes, cracking jokes, and making jokes, and all that. Fine. My point here is, lot of humor you can get, of course, from the net, and understand that the humor, short bits of humorous bits, and try to narrate that. And this is, you know, much better compared to the stories, for a specific reason, that people you find who are interested in listening to you. You need not look for people and all that. When you are there, people come around because you are good at sharing jokes and all that. So stories and jokes, when you read and when you want to share with people, that's perhaps one of the finest exercises you can think of to build speaking English. Jokes and stories. Then you just, you know, like read a lot of books. Okay, it is, many people, they say, you know, reading books and all that. Why people fail in reading general books? There is a reason for that. because they have picked up a book where the subject is not interesting for them. That's the reason. That's a very simple reason. Like, I don't like biographies. Then if I pick up a book on biographies and it has got about, say, 100 pages to 200 pages, I am not interested in knowing about any particular person. That's not my interest. That's not my cup of tea, definitely. Like, and that is where we fail reading the books. And therefore, when you start reading the books, what is essential is that you should think of picking up the genre which you like. And see, when you pick up the genre what you like, suppose it can be comedy, it can be adventurous books, it can be biographies, it can be fiction, it can be, see, anything like. And but if you develop a fascination for such books, of course, of your genre, then you keep reading the book with that interest. And when you're reading a new book and the subject is interesting to you, what perhaps results in is that it holds your attention. You can continuously read the book maybe for 2 hours, 3 hours, and all that. You can complete 100 pages in one go. So the advantage of that the advantage of that is, when you're reading the book for a long time, and you're understanding that book, and you're reading the sentence structure, you have a focus on that, and therefore you get familiar with the new complex sentence structures, epigrammatic sentences. That's the biggest advantage. So you get sentences. And second thing, of course, is vocabulary. When you come across a new word, you just underline it. You can also write the meaning, say maybe in the margin, and you are consciously improving your vocabulary and the sentence structure simultaneously when you're reading the books which you love to read. And therefore, lot of reading is essential. Usually, see, the damage is done in schools. I don't have any reservations to keep it for myself. Just telling you, lot of damage is done in schools because they explain maybe the prose lessons or poetry or whatever it is, they explain. And therefore, when children want to read some book, they want the guidance of the teacher, because they have become dependent. And therefore, teachers should give children an opportunity to read and understand on their own. They can build the skills. And something that should not be done in any English language classroom is explaining. It's ridiculous, in fact. Who are you to explain? The writer knows that he is writing for a particular child of an age, and he knows what words he has to introduce, and he knows the way he has to frame the sentences, and it is no job of the teacher to interfere to explain that. If the teacher starts explaining, it is her perspective. It is not the perspective the child has to develop. When the same book is read by a number of students, their perspectives can be different. The way they understand can be different. The way they notice, the ideas is something, of course, is all very subjective, and different children, they understand it differently. There is nothing wrong in that. It's a language. Not necessary that everybody should understand the same way. Everybody should accept that ideology. Everybody should fall in line, and not necessary. It is the individual's perspective, and they can understand. Sometimes they can deny that. Sometimes they can make better arguments, of course, there, and make claims, counterclaims, and say. Sometimes they can question the veracity of the writer, and therefore it is important to leave it to the discretion of the student to read and understand. What should the teacher do then? Build the skills and make him how to read and how to understand the sentence, how to analyze the sentence, what is the object, what is subject, where is it beginning, and what is the complexity in the sentence structure, and what is the beauty in that. Probably the teacher's job may be to create an interest in the child by talking about the writer, by talking about the writer's background, anything of that kind, but not explaining using other words. When the writer is using specific words in that particular context, and there's absolutely no reason for the teacher to change the words and to give synonyms for that. and let him understand a new word when he reads, and that is going to create an interest for him to read the other works of the same author, and therefore he is developing a kind of interest in that particular, in that author. But now my point is very simple. When the child is reading 10 lessons in an English language main course book or anything, he develops interest for a particular kind of writing, a particular kind of writer. He develops that fascination when he's reading, of course, when he's independent in reading and understanding, he has developed a fascination for it. And that is important actually. He continues to read the works of the same author, more books, and that is going to, like build the habit of general reading. Okay, these days there are so many books available, and perhaps if I can make a suggestion here to all the parents, the best gift, of course, they can think of giving at a very young age to all the students is essentially an e-book reader, like a Kindle. See, the anti-glare screen, of course, doesn't make them uncomfortable. They can turn the pages and they can zoom in, zoom out, and read so many books and all that. They can download, they can delete some of the files, they can add some more files. It makes it so interesting, and it's, of course, it's mobile. They can carry it anywhere they want, and therefore taking so many books along with the children of that age makes it so sensible that reading becomes a passion. And once reading becomes a passion, and learning new vocabulary and learning about the sentence structures and probably building the ideas then. And sometimes the ideas what they have read, of course, in some of the books, they make an indelible impression on the mind, of course. They get registered so firmly and they start liking the author. And slowly, I can say that reading becomes an addiction. And when reading is an addiction, of course, what else you want? That is such a wonderful, method of understanding the world around you. Sometimes we also can lay our hands on books, of course, which probably we come across. We read the books, and it is always, good, in fact, if you can read a wide range of books. And when you speak or when you write somewhere, of course, it gives the authenticity to your speech, because you have read a lot. When you have read a lot, of course, when you speak, and definitely, of course, that authenticity people like. And therefore, my point is, in any avid reader who has got a lot of reading experiences, and probably can speak better, and probably he can write better. And that's very interesting actually. So my bottom line here is that reading should become a passion. Reading should become an addiction. So now we have learned that reading can become a passion, and everybody can start reading the books of their nature, their liking. And now I want to tell you about where else do we get something to listen. Okay. And listening practice is so essential in learning any language for that matter, particularly to speak. Okay, a lot of listening is required. And there is one site, ello.org, ELLO.org, English Language Learning Laboratory. The expansion goes like that, ELLO.org. So if you look at this site, what you will find is that there are a number of listening games. So you listen to them. Either you can hide the transcript or open the transcript. You listen to what they are speaking, and there is a quiz to you there. So you can check whether you are trying to understand it or not, whether you are understanding that or not. And therefore, lot of listening practice, and simultaneously with understanding that, and we are also ascertaining the fact that, of course, we have understood it properly. So a lot of listening games you can practice there. In the same site, of course, you also have mixer groups. Mixer groups means people from 2-3 sometimes even more ethnic backgrounds, like different nations they belong to. They speak on a particular subject. So then you understand on the same topic how different people they speak, what kind of language they are using, and what kind of words they are using, and this you get an understanding about them. People from different countries speaking on the same subject, and that's what we mean by a mixer group and all. And when you have a lot of interviews there, okay, and somebody is asking the questions and somebody is trying to like answer those questions, and you are trying to know about that the person, of course, when you are asking several questions and trying to understand them. But remember, actually, like if one person gives all his ideas, we call them views actually. And interviews means is perhaps the meaning is knowing each other. It's not that one asks questions and one answers. And therefore, when you appear for a job interview, it is not that all the time you're at the receiving end, you have to answer all the questions and they can only pose the questions. It's not that, of course. Sometimes you can also ask some questions, and you can ask the board some questions which are rather, meant for your career growth and all. You can definitely ask the questions. It's an interview. Interview is the exchange of views, and therefore it is. There's no problem, of course. You can also ask some questions. Fine. My point here is this is about using Elo.org to like for the listening games, for the mixer groups, and for interviews, all that stuff. If you want to learn grammar very systematically, and like the best sites perhaps, of course, one is the dailygrammar.com and one is usingenglish.com. These two sites perhaps like will give you an idea, like see, you have say dailygrammar.com will send mails to you, and you can understand this grammar. You get, when you get lessons to your mailbox, and there is a short exercise also for you, and you can try that. So a small lesson, maybe it carries some 3 or 4 sentences and few examples to substantiate that, and then you have got 4 or 5 questions which you need to try. Just that's it. That's a very small lesson. So you get the confidence that you are completing the lessons very soon. Those are all grammar lessons. Okay, there may be some like 300, 400, whatsoever it is, that you can get them in the archives also. So you can download them. You can get these grammar lessons which are really interesting actually. Like you never get bored when you are learning grammar. It's a simple point and a few examples and a bit of assessment, like 4 or 5 questions for you to try, so that you understand that there is a key, of course, to check whether you are right or not. So my point here is you can learn grammar, and inadvertently you can learn. Very consciously you are not learning that, okay, now let me sit and learn grammar. It's not that. So just occasionally you can go through a few lessons. You can just tick them. Okay, I have learned this, I have learned this. Good. So you also get some confidence that you are learning grammar simultaneously, and that gives you confidence, because that syntax any day, the rule book that you have to follow to speak a language or write a language, of course, and that is important for you. Because when you learn grammar, I don't tell that grammar should be learned, but it should be a built-in mechanism where when you are learning the content, simultaneously you are learning grammar. I don't want to alienate grammar from the content what we are learning. They go together, and definitely, of course, learning grammar is an integral part of your learning the content. It can be separate, and this is one. And usingenglish.com will also give you a lot of worksheets. So any language for that matter, or any subject, a worksheet gives you, like a diversified approach of learning. Let me tell you what I mean by that. See, you learn something. Okay, you learn something but you want to know whether it's correct learning or not, whether you have learned it properly or not, whether you have learned it completely or not. Just try a worksheet. See, when there are, let us say, 20 objective type questions, see, multiple choice items, or fill in the blanks, or yes or no, true or false, match the following, whatever it is, like they're all objective type questions. You just try it, okay? And remember, at the end of it, you just check your answers with the key. So you know how you are performing. This is number one. And the second thing is that when you know the correct answers, you are also learning even by attempting this short test. Okay, it is both an assessment tool and a learning tool. That is the advantage of worksheet. Worksheet always helps you to know where you stand, and also it corrects you the mistakes you have committed there. And that is the important part of trying worksheets. I make a suggestion here to all of you. You should gather, prepare, make, or whatever it is, like as many worksheets as possible. If you're an English teacher, you should have at least some 400 to 500 worksheets with you. Okay, it's encompassing all kinds of aspects of grammar. So when you give it to a student, when they try, when they answer, when you supply the key to them at the end of the assessment, when you administer that, and it's much more than testing their knowledge. It is also correcting them, okay, and identifying the mistakes where they are committing and all that, correcting them. And therefore, having worksheets is really a wonderful resource for any English language learner and any discerning teacher. Okay, so this is how we think of worksheets. And later, a contemporary method of learning English language is following the news sites. You have both BBC and Voice of America News. So the advantage of these sites is they are updated day in and day out. Okay, all 24/7 they are updated because it's a news site. At the same time, they read that news item so slowly because these are for learners. Okay, those sites have a component, they serve the listeners, and therefore they just read it very slowly so you can understand. You can also watch the transcript, you can see the text, and you can listen simultaneously. Both can be done, and you are following the current updates. So you see the advantages. You are listening and you are also following the latest news. You are updating your general knowledge, current affairs, and simultaneously you are trying to listen to good English, practicing. So all these advantages you got to learn the language. You are not wasting any time in learning the abstract grammar and all that. Like you are learning some content which is contemporary, and you are trying to get a hold on general knowledge, and at the same time you are learning a language inadvertently. So my point is, follow the news websites, and that they distinctly they are going to help you a lot. Okay, that is about worksheets. Then like when you watch movies or when you are listening to some songs, and like what is essential for you is that you understand the lyrics of the song. Okay, that's a beauty. Like when you are understanding the lyrics of the song, probably you can enjoy it better. It's not only the music, it's again the language, the lyrics you are understanding, the words you are understanding, the meaning you are understanding of those lyrics and all. And when you understand the meanings, of course, perhaps listen to the song is more sensible for you. And similarly, when you are watching a movie on television or on your computer, when you are watching, when you have your subtitles and of course scrolling titles, when you are following the text part of it, and also you are also seeing the person, the body language and all, and they give you a comprehensive view of learning English. Initially, you just need to have the script there, and later, of course, you can hide it and you still can understand it, of course. Gradually, like initially, you start with following the script, and when you are watching the dramatization there, when they are enacting a drama there. But slowly, what happens here is you just come out of that watching the transcript, and you can listen and understand, you can watch and you can follow, and your focus is completely shifted to following the drama there happening. And therefore watch a lot, listen to a lot of songs, and these are all the best ways of learning English. Particularly for young children, I suggest something. Of course, you need a lot of music, lot of color, a lot of art. And these things are essential, of course, when you are talking about young children. I suggest Karadi tales for them. Karadi tales. Karadi tales is, Karadi is like a bear, both in Kannada and Tamil. And these Karadi tales are mythological stories and some social stories also. It's all filled with stories and songs, and particularly for young children, they get really glued to the screen when they are watching this one, because there's a lot of music, there's a lot of action, a lot of animation, and excellent voiceover. And I tell you one thing, the script written there, it's something so good. But children learn, see, a benchmark language. It's not that you simple words because they are children and all that. So many words which are carefully chosen by the people, and when they are learning, like such words which are really very attractive, very appropriate, very contextual there, and definitely, of course, you are setting a standard to their language right from the young age. Let your children, let the students listen to good English. Don't underestimate them. They can't understand this particular word. It's a very difficult word. There's nothing like difficult, maybe unfamiliar. And slowly when they start using the word, of course, it becomes familiar, and that builds a rich vocabulary right from the young age. It is always said, of course, the language skills are built up. Of course, 85% of the brain development takes place before 6 years of age. Even the national education policy strongly recommends that the teaching, to children, of course, below 6 years old, it's a very serious matter. You can't just say that children, they can just, pass their time and all. There's nothing like that, and the learning very seriously happens. That is the stage where they develop the culture. That is the stage where they get many of the habits. That is the where they learn the language. That is where they learn the etiquette and how to cope with the people and all that, and communicate with others and getting their things done. And many of the things are taught, of course, at that age. And therefore, my point here is, that part is, the crux of the story, the most essential part. They learn simple words, basic structure of sentence is learnt there. They speak in full sentences when they come to grade 1. It is expected, of course, they should be able to converse in English meaningfully, and not one-word answers. There are full sentences, and therefore that is very, very important. I recommend for young children, of course, Kara Tales, and which makes learning, of course, much, much easier for them, because they focus on music, color, and dramatization, and all the features. It's a package. And my point here for all the youngsters, of course, who are going, just this video is to give you a roadmap, a plan of action. I just tell you a few points which are rather, you should really remember them and start doing. Like it's something like, first, building the vocabulary. Second one is sentence construction, structures. And the third one, general reading. And the fourth one is lot of listening, it can be media you are using there. Okay, lot of listening, even your BBC and Voice of America news sites, and getting some grammar lessons. Of course, you should be in touch with some of the sites, even some of the fora where you can discuss and present your views. I suggest to youngsters even the social media sites where you are trying to put a post, and there are some people, of course, who can give you a right judgment how exactly you have written your ideas and your language. Of course, both of them are viewed by people, and you get some comments there, and it makes rather interesting. Therefore, any social media intervention, of course, is good for all kinds of people, because you are communicating. It is, you are writing already, started writing already, and it can be your Twitter or Facebook or any WhatsApp groups. They just really make you feel comfortable. Of course, you write something. Having done this one, of course, the last part is about identifying the errors. We do make mistakes. Okay, we can't, no one is perfect for that matter. We see our pronunciation may sometimes go wrong, and our sentence structure may not be grammatically true, of course, and anything, of course, because the word may not be appropriate, but you have used that word, which is, of course, doesn't suit in that particular context. My point here is, you take about 100 to 150 common errors, simple mistakes we make, and you just know how to correct them and know the reason for that. Why is it a mistake, and why this is not a mistake here, and all that, how that mistake is rectified. So my point is, common errors is a topic, of course, in English language learning, and it's a very essential one, of course, because these are all common mistakes, general mistakes, and many people may commit those mistakes. And for you particularly, to avoid such mistakes, the best thing perhaps you can do is that go through that mistake, try to correct that on your own. And in case, of course, you find something wrong there, you can correct it. Otherwise, of course, you got a key there, and he tells you, of course, this is the mistake that's committed there. This is how it should be done. And therefore, common mistakes about 100 and 150, if you can just correct, it takes maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, of course, if you seriously learn that. And I tell you, language learning, emphatically, I tell you, it can happen, say, in a week's time. I say 2 days, but somehow I am giving a long rope and bit generous, of course, in saying this one. A week's time, if you can focus on learning the language, and certainly, of course, to speak flawless, error-free English doesn't take more than that. But however, I have an important caution for you, and nothing like no one has ever reached the stage where he can say that I have learned, I am perfect, I know, and all that. These are words, of course, they're preposterous. What is right there is that yes, you are enriching your language skills, you are refining your language, and whenever you are making some sentences which you made earlier, probably you are rephrasing them and making it better and making it more appealing to the people. And certainly, of course, you will come out of this stage and where you can say that your language is looked upon and people admire that language. Thank you very much for understanding this one, and hope your journey to learn good English can start very soon today. And yeah, you set some lines for it to complete, and hopefully, like, in a week's time, you can be truly comfortable in speaking English. Thank you so much.